in St. John's Cemetery, be considered, I guess you could consider Middle Village, Queens. Did a few videos here, and we're continuing kind of this series here, found in section 11. The grave, or the mausoleum rather, of Joe Profaci, known as Giuseppe, could be referred to as the Olive Oil King Joe rather, Don Pepiano, Old Man Profaci. Profaci crime family, which eventually became the Colombo crime family. Now, Mr. Profaci was born in 1897 and died in 1962. Born in Sicily, spent 1 year in prison on theft charges, and in 1921 immigrated to New York City. Profaci settled in Chicago, where he opened up a grocery store and bakery. Business was unsuccessful, and in 1925 relocated to New York, where he entered the olive oil import business. By 1927, he became a United States citizen, and at some point after his move to Brooklyn, he became involved with local gangs. And this is one of the biggest mausoleums here for Mr. Profaci in St. John's Cemetery. So the story goes that in 1928, Mr. Profaci, he attended a mob meeting in Cleveland, Ohio, that would make him an organized crime boss in Brooklyn. In 1928, Brooklyn boss Salvatore D'Aquila became murdered. An important part of the Cleveland meeting, attended by mobsters from Tampa, Florida, Chicago, and Brooklyn, was to appoint Profaci as Aquila's replacement so as to maintain calm among the Brooklyn gangs. Now, Profaci had a lot of experience in organized crime. It is unclear really why the New York gangs gave him power in Brooklyn. Some thought that Profaci received this position due to his family status in Sicily, where they may have belonged to the Villabate Mafia. Profaci may have also benefited from contacts made through his olive oil business. Now, Cleveland police eventually raided the meetings and expelled the mobsters from Cleveland, but Profaci's business was accomplished. So by 1930, for someone that was experienced in organized crime, Profaci was already controlling numbers in prostitution, loan sharking, narcotics, all happening in Brooklyn. So in 1930, there was a war that broke out in New York City among the organized crime families. And now some sources say that Profaci remained neutral, while others say that Profaci was firmly aligned with boss Salvatore Maranzano. When the war finally ended in 1931, top mobster Charles Luciano reorganized the New York gangs into 5 organized crime families. At this point, Profaci was recognized as the boss of what was the Profaci crime family, which was very, very powerful. Now, Profaci obtained most of his wealth through illegal enterprises such as protection rackets and extortion. However, to protect himself from federal tax evasion charges, he maintained his original olive oil business, known as Mafia Importing Company, leading to his nickname as Olive Oil King. As the demand for olive oil skyrocketed after World War II, his business thrived. Profaci owned 20 other businesses that employed hundreds of workers in New York. Profaci, big estate, big house in Brooklyn, big house in Miami Beach, Florida, 320-acre estate in New Jersey, which at that point had belonged to former President Theodore Roosevelt. Had its own airstrip and a chapel with an altar that replicated the one in St. Peter's Basilica. So, as you could see, really a devout Catholic who made generous cash donations to Catholic charities, Knights of Columbus. He would invite priests to his estate to celebrate Mass. In 1952, a thief stole valued jeweled crowns from a shrine in Brooklyn, and Profaci set his men to recover the crowns and reportedly killed the thief. So, kind of in contrast to his generosity to his relatives and his church, many of his men considered him to be like a Grinch with his money. One reason was that each person, family member, was to pay him $25 a month. That's kind of an old Sicilian gang custom, and people thought, for a guy that had all this money for its members to be paying him $25 a month back then was a lot. Even if it was a small amount, they thought that it did not make sense. The money, which approximately came out to $50,000 a month back then, was meant to support the families of mobsters in prison. However, most of this money stayed with Profaci, allegedly. In addition, Profaci did not tolerate any dissent from his policies, and people who expressed discontent, if you expressed anger, you were murdered.
Can you stop that, please? We're going
No,
to 2 minutes.
Why?
Why?
Because you make wrong videos.
No, I don't. I make fun videos. You make boring videos.
I don't.
Yes, you do.
No! Come back in here right now.
1 minute, right now.
No!
Yes.
Come.
Fast forwarding to 1961, the Gallows, led by Joe Gallo, kidnapped 4 of Profaci's top men. Profaci himself eluded capture and flew to sanctuary in Florida. You might be referring to this as the First Colombo War. While holding the hostages, Larry and Albert Gallo sent Joe Gallo to California. The Gallows demanded a more favorable financial scheme for the hostages' release. Gallo wanted to kill one hostage and demand $100,000 before negotiations, but his brother Larry overruled him. After a few weeks of negotiation, Profaci made a deal with the Gallows, and all hostages were eventually released. However, Profaci had no intention of honoring his peace agreement. In August of 1961, Joe Profaci ordered the murder of Gallo members Joe, Jelly, and Larry Gallo. Gunmen allegedly murdered them after inviting him to go fishing. Larry Gallo survived a strangulation attempt in the Sahara Club of East Flatbush by Carmine Perisco and Salvatore Sally D'Ambrosio after a police officer intervened. So by 1962, Profaci's health was failing. In early 1962, Carlo Gambino also buried here. And Lucchese crime family boss Tommy Lucchese tried to convince Profaci to resign to end the gang war. It was getting out of control. However, Profaci strongly suspected that the two bosses were secretly supporting the Gallo brothers and wanted to take control of his family. Profaci refused to resign. Furthermore, he warned that any attempt to remove him would spark a wider gang war. Gambino and Lucchese did not pursue their efforts. Profaci died in 1962, and after his death, Magliocco succeeded him as the head of the family. In 1963, the commission forced Magliocco out of the office and installed Joseph Colombo as family boss. At that point, the Profaci crime family became the Colombo crime family. The final resting spot of Giuseppe Joe Profaci.